It's an interesting shot. Just went to check up on the death of Zeus, because one of the logical things from there is Athena's job was to overthrow Zeus. And how is Zeus overthrown? And I said, well, Athena only cared about peace, and the god his sibling Ares had to do it, which is really really strange considering in other literary texts associated with Greek mythology, Ares is not Athena's sibling at all. They have different parentage, as it turns out. Ares, however, Ares in that case, is associated with the planet Mars. So we can see why he's associated with the god of war, because technically in Greek mythology he was. That part's true. What does that mean? Ares is the one that's supposed to overthrow Zeus, they said, and Zeus chickens out. Instead of dying, he agrees to lock the doors of Olympus, so the gods don't interfere with the world anymore. Yeah, no, that's not what Ares would do. See, the thing about Ares is that Ares is a very strange one. He is supposed to be, in Western astrology, the emperor. He's associated with the emperor card, apparently. Don't know where that's coming from, but we'll use it anyway, just for now. And so he's supposed to be the emperor, so that means he wants to be the ruler. Does that mean he's attempting to overthrow Athena? Is it not the case that war overthrows peace? Well, actually, Athena was not a peace goddess. She was actually the leader of the army. She was a commander-in-chief. She was not the one that brought war. She was the one that could negotiate peace. She was the one that the soldiers invoked when they went to war, but she was not a goddess of peace. She favoured intellectual means and diplomacy means to get things done, but she was a quote-unquote peaceful character, but she was not someone that you would qualify as the goddess of peace. She was actually the goddess of war. So sometimes some people might mistake that as being Ares' sister, which isn't true. Okay, they weren't actually siblings at all. They never were siblings in the first place. Ares is kind of a standalone, one cause god. Okay, so sometimes the gods in ancient Greece, they have one thing that they do, and sometimes they have a bunch of things that they do. In Athena's case, she had a bunch of things. Her actual brother was Apollo. Okay, not Ares. Apollo was more associated with the arts and crafts, specifically a musical instrument called the lyre, Lyre. In that respect, Apollo was more the party boy and wasn't interested in fighting. Athena was definitely the rough one. Okay, she was rough as when she needed to be. There's a lot of depictions of her going into battle. So that short was factually inaccurate of ancient Greek society. Factually inaccurate. The idea of Ares attempting to overthrow Zeus is also not true. Okay. Ares would have been employed by Hephaestus. Okay. And the reason why Ares would have been employed by Hephaestus is because Hephaestus was in Greek mythology the god of the underworld, or one of the gods of the underworld. He wasn't, strictly speaking, the god of the underworld proper. So in terms of Hades, well, Hades was Pluto was Hades, so technically Hades was the god of the underworld, or Pluto, okay? And there's Pluto and Persephone are another story. So Hephaestus wasn't the boss in the underworld. He lived in one of the passages that go towards the underworld under a volcano and did blacksmithing there. So his job was to make the weapons for the gods. So those flash amazing swords and weapons they run around with, all produced by Hephaestus. Okay, he was their weapons merchant. And so if Ares, the god of war, would have had a close relationship with Hephaestus, because he required the weapons. He required the weapons that Hephaestus manufactured. Okay, Ares would have gotten those weapons from Hephaestus. Probably would have done so without Athena's consent, because Ares, by attempting to overthrow Zeus, was also attempting to overthrow the prophecy of Athena being the one that overthrows Zeus. Okay, so the actual prophecy that led to Herod doing what they did was that Zeus was chronically paranoid because he'd been told by a soothsayer that he would have a son that would overthrow him. And so Hera, not in a state of jealousy, but rather in a state of smart-assery, decided to craft a daughter in his head who comes flying out with weapons, destined to overthrow him. The son he actually had was Apollo, and Apollo was a softie. He liked to play music all day. So it's a bit of a misunderstanding to say that the goddess that preferred diplomacy and was invoked by the warriors preferred peace. It's not actually true. She did battle differently to Ares, is more accurate. Ares would have been the one that would call into beings to bloodshed. Ares would call for bloodshed. Ares would do the ambush strategies. Ares would make the ramparts, and whatever else. Well, he wouldn't. Ramparts wouldn't be made by the weapons manufacturer. They'd be made by the soldiers building the barracks and whatever else. Okay, but the actual weapons would have been made by Hephaestus. So Ares' job was to act as kind of like a general type character or a major in an army type thing, who calls the platoons to war. Okay, he's not actually the political head of state. In that story, that's Athena. So, unless Athena directed Ares to go after Zeus, Ares was acting without the permission of the political establishment in Athens. And he certainly was acting without the religious establishment, because Zeus was the head of that, and he was the one being overthrown. It's also not the case that Zeus would have argued that they would rather shut the gates of Olympus than be killed, because why? Why would Zeus not argue that? Because Zeus required the gates of Olympus to be open so that he could access the Athenians whenever he saw fit. He was completely 100% dependent on the people of Athens for rent boys like Ganymede, for random, farm girls running around, or farm ladies running around, that pretty Athenian ladies, and Grecian ladies who just happened to be accosted by a shapeshifter from Olympus, a lecherous old man who was drunk off his head on fucking ouzo. He would have had absolutely no way of maintaining any sense of control or power if he had shut the doors to Olympus. He would have lost his status as a god completely. He would have been reduced to nothing but a creepy old man sitting on a chair. And you know what Ganymede would do then? Fuck you, you creep. Don't want to be your rent boy. That was an abduction. And so at that point, you might say that Aquarius, which is associated with Ganymede, overthrows Jupiter, which is associated with Zeus. Technically, it's Ganymede that kills Zeus as an act of revenge for being raped by Zeus. So what does Ares do? Ares stirs discord amongst the gods of Olympus, or amongst the stars, if you will, or amongst the people of Athens. He stirs them up to war. He stirs the other groups up to war as well. He creates war between tribes, war between lands, because he's the war god. And when he's done so without Athena's permission, then he's broken Athenian law. So At what point, we'll use this as an analogy for the United States of America, okay? Donald Trump thinks he's Zeus, doesn't he? He thinks he's a god sitting on Mount Olympus, sitting on his throne, drinking his ouzo, a lecherous old man. Who's his hero? Is it Melania? Was it Ivana before she died? Is it someone else? What if it was Ivana? What if Ivana Trump, before she was taken from this world, acted like Hera and maybe went to her country of origin? I understand it was Russia, maybe. Decided to hatch a little plan to get revenge on Zeus. Krasnov, anyone? Well, that's what that story refers to. Not to say that he's actually Zeus or anything like that, but who's Hephaestus in that story? The weapons manufacturer? The one with the club foot? Who does the weapons manufacturing for the US government? Who's those corporations? And Ares, the god of war, would obviously have to be a major from the military. Does that mean that maybe, just maybe, the American military is about to run afoul? They are going to disobey their commander-in-chief. They're not listening to Zeus. Athena's supposed to be there, but Zeus is there. Why? Athena's supposed to be there, but Zeus is there. Why? Why do they have a lecherous old man sitting on the chair judging, and Athena's supposed to be there, but America's supposed to be a democracy just like ancient Greece? Is Ares going to disobey or straight up, off the cuff, go against Zeus and go against Athena and do whatever Ares thinks is best? The evidence says yes. And the evidence says that Zeus is in fact going to be killed. And the evidence says that that has something to do with constitutional crisis. And perhaps, maybe, just maybe, Athena's in the background somewhere. Not in Australia, of course. And she's organising it. And maybe her name is Kamala Harris. Have a nice day.